There we go. Oh my God. Eso correcto. Okay, there's a couple of things we gotta check. I'm ready. I'm amped up. TikTok. iCkEdMeL, check out this TikTok. Okay.
Back to the affidavit.
All right. So let me give it a second before we start. What's up, everybody? Welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Sorry for coming late. Perdóname. I was dealing with a couple of things, but I gotta come through though. Gotta come through. We're gonna talk about Nancy, kinda. We're gonna listen to Nancy's podcast, but we also got a couple of things to talk about. Like they're saying that this guy was wearing surgical gloves. Also about the roommate thing that a lot of people are talking about and wondering about. I feel like this thing is kind of, and I made a slight adjustment to the mic. And yeah, how you guys doing, man? It notified you late, Valerie? I don't know. It does that sometimes, like minutes after the stream starts or something like that. Did I end up having 2 streams? No, this should only be the only stream. Paula says, please don't allow victim blaming. Try not to. I mean, that's not me. That's not what I want to go for. But I don't think that it's like a thin line, I guess. I don't think that we can't talk about what happened with the roommate or like why some people think it's weird and then maybe offer an explanation. I don't think we should just like void the conversation, but like we should probably try to keep it respectful and not blame her or like accuse her, but I think it's definitely a conversation to have. And if you've watched me for a while, I don't really do that anyway, like pointing the finger at, but it is strange. And that's actually what we're going to start off with, a video that somebody sent me that offered a possible explanation. We talked a little bit about it last night too. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to come down on that lady, but I don't think that, I don't know how you can hear me. I have the audio check right here. You should be able to hear me. It's loud and clear. You might have to turn your volume up. You got the notification. Amazing. Well, that's the thing. Michelle says, I'm sure it'll make sense in court. There's going to be a lot of information that comes out for sure. There's going to be things that put the pieces together probably. So I'm sure there's things we don't know. I want to start off with this TikTok. I haven't even watched this, but I got an email. From S. Rodriguez and said, hey, Mel, I think this would be great to share to give others insight why the roommate DM went back to sleep instead of checking what's going on. Everyone needs to see this and understand that she's a victim to this case as well. So let's check it out. Let's start off with that.
Back to the affidavit.
Okay. And what I'll do too is I'll plug this guy's video in the description. This is Casey Little, I think. Let's check it out.
Again, as predicted, people are lighting up over the finding that one of the roommates saw the attacker leave the building, but the 911 call didn't come in until noon. So why the delay? This is really easy to explain. It's very simple. I see a lot of other creators have already talked about it. What we have to do, though, is take our hindsight bias and put it on the back burner here. We know what happened and how brutal it was. Our knowledge of the outcome is tainting our judgment of what that roommate should have perceived or how she should have reacted or what she should have done. There was no reason for her to believe a quadruple murder was going on in her house. We know it was a party house. People who lived there before said it was very creaky and noisy. You're going to tune out a lot of noises or disregard a lot of noises. And your first interpretation is not going to be something horrible going on when you hear things. Now, people asked, why didn't Kaylee's dog bark? Turned out from this, the dog was barking, but the dog was in Kaylee's room. Kaylee was not. She was in Maddie's room. Now, I said earlier, I mentioned Maddie's room being the last attacked. That's not correct. Maddie's room was likely the first attacked.
Maddie's room. Okay.
Roommate was awoken to the sound of Kaylee's dog barking. Dog was probably barking in response to the initial attack, which the roommate probably slept through most of. The roommate just felt it was Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs. Rather common sound. She didn't know Kaylee wasn't in her room with the dog. She thought she heard Kaylee say, "There's someone here." The affidavit says that was likely Xana saying that. She then thought she heard crying coming from Xana's room. She actually opened her door a couple times to listen. She thought she heard a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Nothing so far is indicating some triple or quadruple murder.
And that whole thing, "it's okay," that's a weird thing too. Like, I mean, was that Bryan talking? Was he kind of like, I don't know, man, I don't even want to think about like, or was that Ethan? You know, I don't know.
Going on. The last time she opened her door, she was startled because there was a dark-clad person with a mask covering their nose and mouth walking by. She didn't expect to see anyone. She said she stood there in a frozen shock phase. We think it's because she saw a murderer. There was no reason for her to think that at that point. As far as she knew, her roommates were all still up and awake, and this was just some creepy guest they had invited over that she didn't know, that startled her, kind of scared her. So she decided to lock her door and probably go right back to sleep. No reason for her to interpret that anything was going on. Beating up the roommates over this repeatedly is horrid because they are likely beating themselves up, second guessing what they should have done, thinking they could have changed the outcome somehow, and nothing they could have done would have changed the outcome other than just add themselves to the fatality list here.
Well, that's one of the things I've wondered. So I've heard, you know, just objectively speaking, and again, I don't want to put like, I don't want to add on to like, I can imagine probably the guilt maybe that this person's feeling. Now this is, you know, out there publicly for everybody. And who knows, maybe if there's other pieces of this puzzle that'll come together. Who knows if one day in the future, I don't think now she can speak, but maybe who knows after the trial or maybe during the trial, we'll hear more pieces of it. But I've heard people say like, maybe if she would have called, you know, the police, maybe somebody could have been alive. You know, we don't know. At the same time, maybe she could have been a target as well. Maybe she could have been killed in the process as well. Maybe she would have, you know, I don't know. Had she screamed, you know, her reaction was shock, which is understandable. But maybe if it wasn't shock, what if she screamed? Maybe the guy would have turned around and killed her. It's just a lot to kind of like what ifs and in hindsight. I do understand the confusion though, as far as people, because I was wondering myself, like, damn, why, you know, to the morning, you know, why, but who knows, maybe she, you know, maybe she didn't know that these people were murdered or whatever. The other thing, I wonder why he skipped past her room to go to Xana, but maybe it could have been that her room door was locked and the others weren't, you know. And I've seen people talk about the food delivery that happened, like I thought it was like at 4 something, right? And then right after they were killed. You know, that's just kind of weird. I guess just the timing. But I don't know, man. Maybe we'll find out more as we come. I don't want to be the person like with a platform to pile on like that. You know, like it's just different when if I were to say it here versus having a private conversation, you know. But I totally understand people's like wondering and trying to, like, even my friend wrapping their heads around it. How do you, you know? And that's what I was wondering too. So Susan in the chat, she's like, he may not have even seen her. That's what I was wondering. Did he see her? Did he not? Did she just open her door and he walked past? I don't know. Somebody said at least text your friend and ask if they're okay. That's true too. I don't know if she did or not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that discussion can happen in a respectful way, probably. I don't know if it's possible without bashing or whatever, possibly. I don't know. But that I wanted to bring that up as well, and we'll probably touch on that more later. And I'm kind of curious what Nancy will say. I don't think she spoke about that particular situation. So my friend was saying too that her door apparently opens inward. So maybe if she opens the door, he wouldn't have seen, you know. I don't know. And like I said, everybody reacts differently. But people are talking about like the delay in time. You know, why so long? Why hours later? But, you know, we know that one of the roommate's phones was used, but it actually wasn't the roommate that called. And another theory that I had heard somewhere, somebody has said maybe she's the roommate that passed out. Maybe she went back into that room and passed out. And somebody came into the house later, or for whatever reason, there's just missing pieces that we don't know, because what happened to the first floor roommate as well? You know, did somebody, I don't know, maybe she's the one that passed out, you know? I don't know. All right, so let's see, what did I want to get to? Not that. Oh, this here. Get warned. If you guys could hit like, I'd appreciate that. The like button. Let me get the super chats real quick. 2AF, thank you for the super chat. Says, thank you for showing Nancy Grace. I can never find her. Apparently she has like a live. So this is just a podcast, audio podcast, but apparently she has like a video live that you have to pay for, that you can sign up to. Lex Nuttingham. Hello, Mel, fellow Idahoan here. Calls later. Yeah, maybe we could do some calls later. Ruth, thank you for the super chat. If we get through this, yeah, we could probably do some calls. The lines get full. We could do like Friday night calls later too. I don't know. The wild Friday night calls. So this is order to preserve crime scene and evidence. The court having before it the defendant's motion to preserve crime scene and evidence, therefore no objection by the state, and good cause appearing now, therefore. So it says here, the crime scene located at the 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, including the home and outbuildings, trailers, vehicles, curtilage shall be preserved, which means the house shall be locked. Crime tape will remain on site. Police presence is not required. The crime scene will remain preserved until February 1st, 2023. Sorry, 2023. It is further ordered that all samples and evidence collected or generated by the state in this matter, including but not limited to bodily fluids, blood, tissues, notes, slides, photographs, and other relevant information, be held and preserved by the state for the defense. Okay, so defense ain't playing. They want everything preserved, which makes sense. Okay, I got sent the same thing a couple times. Let's see. Oh, that's just that. Okay. So they're preserving that house. It's going to be on lockdown still. The other thing, too, I want to grab a couple of snippets before we get started with Nancy. Wow, this is really... Okay.
Now, guys, I am pilloried often online, which I try not to pay any attention to, about convicting people before they go to trial. I think it should probably go unsaid, but maybe I have to say it again. Of course, there's the presumption of innocence. Of course, Kohberger's going to go to trial. And of course, at this juncture, we don't know all the evidence or what the defense is going to say. Maybe they'll prove the DNA is wrong, if there is DNA. We don't know yet. We are talking about the facts as we know them right now. We are not in a court of law. Jump in.
What's more troubling is his alleged comments while he's in custody in Pennsylvania. If those spontaneous
wait. Before you even start talking, Del Carson, about what a female inmate said, first of all, I didn't know that anybody housed men and women together. Never heard of it.
In some places they do. Or like, I thought, anybody know in the chat, I thought they said that like when they're just being held for a little while or something, they actually do.
That, which at first blush struck me as being wrong. Then I looked at her record of, domestic violence on Christmas Day, I believe it was. And I found what she said that Kohberger said to be fantastical. Things like, I cut them, I'm going to cut you too. Yes, I'm a creeper, come in my cell and find out. That didn't jive with what we already know about him.
Yeah, and I don't think that lines up, those comments that she made about him. And they said that apparently she was in that same jail. That was confirmed, but Brian Enton and some other people had said that she had gotten the wrong identity apparently, and that it was somebody else. So, but that whole thing, I'll cut
now, guys,
you,
I am
and that supposedly singing the Bad Bunny, I'll cut you, which I don't know if I've heard of a lyric ever by Bad Bunny saying fantastical, a word. I don't know. Is that a word? I kind of like it. Fantastical. I think it is. Well, I don't know. Fantastical. A strange and wonderful, like something out of a story. It might be a word. It is a word. Might have to use that sometimes. The TikTok sleuth had a fantastical story. Whatever. Reading. We got our guy here.
I'm joined now by former D.C. homicide detective and Fox News contributor Ted Williams. Ted, welcome.
Oh.
Thanks, Mike.
So we expect the suspect to waive his extradition rights. And so when he gets back to Moscow, Idaho, presumably early this week, what kind of questions do you think homicide detectives will have for him when they get to speak with him?
Well, Mike, in light of the fact that he's lawyered up in Pennsylvania, and from what I've been told, that there are lawyers who went into court here in Moscow when there was a cleanup team back here cleaning this crime scene up. They went into court and they got an order enjoining or stopping the cleaning of this place. Mm-hmm. So if that team of lawyers is representing him, Mike, homicide detectives will not be able to question him because he's closed in his constitutional rights. But I can tell you, Mike, this guy was a criminology major.
Yeah.
And if he is found to be the killer, it is believed from everything that I've seen that he thought that he had committed the perfect crime. And there is no such thing, Mike, as a perfect crime. You always take something from a crime scene or you leave something at the crime scene. Mm-hmm. And I think, as Dan Springer has reported, they have a great deal of DNA evidence to work with.
So the crime was committed November 13th. He was arrested early Friday, December 30th, some 2,500 miles away from the scene. Your reaction to that, I mean, did you worry that they might never find this guy?
Well, what I worried about is that this is a college town and that people are in transit and that he may very well not have been here. But what is significant about this investigation, not only the DNA, but that white car. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement has confiscated in Pennsylvania a white car. They are scrubbing that white car. And what they're going to do, I believe, is to show a nexus between that white car and this crime scene. That's over my shoulder, Mike.
I have myself muted.
How do
you can tell Ted's turned up today. He's like on some
think the cops in Moscow are
up.
feeling? Obviously, they were under intense pressure to come up with a suspect and to make an arrest.
I think law enforcement is feeling vindicated to some degree because there was the community wanting an arrest right away. And law enforcement knew that they were walking two tracks. One, that they needed to bring the perpetrator to justice. Mm-hmm. They believe that they have that perpetrator. Now on the other side is the prosecution. And that is what they are building a case to successfully prosecute the person that they have in custody, Kohberger.
Ted, put your attorney hat on, if you will. How concerned do you think the public defender is about this guy being convicted in the court of public opinion?
Well, they're deeply concerned about that. Any lawyers who are going to represent him. And that's one reason why it's going to be very important for lawyers to be able to get into the crime scene that's over my shoulder here to try to prepare a defense for him. And as you know, the next day, the students who were on the first floor of this building over my shoulder are the ones who called other students to the crime scene before law enforcement. As a result of that, the defense attorneys are going to talk about, I think, a great deal of contamination of the crime scene. But the big question...
That's what Maven said last night, too. Like, possibly one of the things that they might go for, them being at the scene and just some of the way that things maybe were handled,
was Kohberger and has Kohberger been in this place, this crime scene that's over my shoulder before? That is certainly something that I'm hoping that we will learn vis-a-vis the affidavit that has been sealed in this case and will be unsealed once he's brought back here to Moscow, Idaho.
You know, as a dad, I've been trying to imagine the horror of these parents to go through this worst imaginable situation and then waiting for week after week after week for law enforcement to do their jobs and to find the person responsible. Final thought on the families and what you've witnessed over the past 7 weeks or so.
You know, Mike, you cannot walk in the shoes of parents who have lost their children under these circumstances. And I could, through the 4 weeks that law enforcement has been trying to resolve and settle this case, and these parents have been crying out, and at times frustratingly crying out. And you have to understand that these are parents, just as you, Mike, who love their children, and their children are now gone, and they know that these children are never going to come back. But what they want is the person who killed them to be prosecuted successfully.
Ted Williams, former D.C. homicide detective. Great to have your analysis and your perspective today. Thank you, Ted.
All right. That's Ted. Now I want to get onto this whole thing about this before we get to Nancy as well. We'll go full screen here. Move myself over to the side. Appreciate you guys being here. If you could hit the like button, I'd appreciate it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And we did a really interesting podcast or stream last night with a lawyer that did a really amazing job, Maven. So check out that live if you haven't done so already, and check out her channel. Mr. and Mrs. Steelers, thank you for the super chat, says, I don't think he saw her, which is also why they didn't release the 911 call. She might have said in 911 call she saw someone to protect her, and so BK won't show there was a witness. Possibly. That's a good theory. That's a possibility. Plausible. Dr. Edward Moskowitz, thank you for the super chat, says prayers for this young girl. So many people come and go. She simply probably thought it was another roommate acquaintance. Please send her hugs. True. SW4x4 Explorers, thank you for the super chat, says flight or fright. Epinephrine / adrenaline could have influenced DM and or Bryan maybe not seeing her. This seems to be a huge factor in him being caught. The neighborhood, thank you for the super chat, says if a security camera 50 feet away captured whimpers and thuds, how the F did the roomie not hear that? Yeah. Maria, thank you for the super chat, says how much shook can you be in? How much shook can you be in when you're able to call your friends to come over before you call the police? Somebody, I don't know, there was like a theory going around too. I don't know if this is true. Grain of salt. Infamous truth teller said in the chat earlier, I think said maybe because they were out having a good time, she let her phone go dead, and maybe it was charging or she didn't know where she put it because they were drinking. Possible. Anything's possible, man, at this point. All right. FBI watched Idaho killer take out the trash from his parents' home and put it in their neighbor's bin while wearing surgical gloves at 4 a.m. Agents used items to link him to DNA found at crime scene. So they're saying this guy took trash from his parents' house and put it in the neighbor's bin, the trash bin, while wearing surgical gloves at 4 a.m. An FBI surveillance team watched Idaho murder suspect Bryan take out the trash at his parents' house wearing surgical gloves at 4 a.m. before dumping it in the neighbor's bin. New details of how authorities snared the alleged quadruple murder have been revealed. The officers watching a 28-year-old for 4 days before his arrest. The officers were tasked with tracking Kohberger so they could arrest him as soon as a warrant was issued, as well as trying to get a hold of an object to compare DNA to a sample found at the scene. He was also seen cleaning the inside and outside of his car, with the source adding that he didn't miss an inch. That car was so dirty, though. He cleaned the outside of the car? That shit was rancid. When did he clean the outside of the car? All right, that's Kohberger. That's Kohberger's parents' home. Law enforcement saw him multiple times outside of his parents' $250,000 Pennsylvania home wearing surgical gloves. A source told CNN Kohberger wore surgical gloves while taking out the bags and was even seen putting trash into neighbors' bins at around 4 a.m. This was prior to his arrest, with agents recovering items from both his family home and the neighbors. All of the items were sent to Idaho State Lab, with them managing to confirm DNA found on a USMC sheath button, which officers discovered next to the bodies of Kaylee Goncalves and Maddy Mogen. Unsealed court documents show the painstaking work done by officers who matched the DNA found on the sheath to Kohberger's by comparing to his father's DNA, which was a 99.998% match, which we spoke about that last night, and Maven broke that down to saying that now they'll probably swab him while he's locked up and to get a higher match as well, just to confirm. The White Hyundai launcher is one of the things that helped cops track down the alleged killer, as well as obtaining his phone records. And I think that was it for this. A SWAT team then moved in as soon as a warrant was obtained, breaking down the doors and windows in what a source said was a dynamic entry. They added that it was a rare tactic that was only used in cases where this suspect is considered high risk. He yesterday appeared in court, and we know all the stuff. The rest is history. It's Kohberger smiling. But at one point, he smiled to his attorney. Kohberger. And Maven said that, like, a lot of the time, these attorneys, they'll tell their client, like, chill out, behave appropriately, don't act out, whatever. So, because appearances are a lot too, All right. Oh, let me. Sorry, guys.
The matter for further hearing. You have the following rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. Death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 4 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice.
Like to ask
Madison Mogen, from which
I would like to ask the court to consider setting the limit.
Be provided to you, Mr. Kohberger, by way of being provided notice of these documents.
So we're trying to act all normal, nodding his head
So
and
get a
shit.
copy of these no contact orders. What you do need to be advised of, and what will be in this no contact order, is you are prohibited from having any contact with them whatsoever. You cannot contact them through third person, in writing, or by any electronic means. You cannot Facebook chat upon them or place them in reasonable fear of bodily injury. You cannot go within or and if you do violate these orders.
All right, so I think we have for that CNN. This was the original article about the trash bag stuff and everything. Let's get to Nancy, I guess, for now. Nancy Grace, Nancy. Cheeks, what's up? Thank you for the super chat. Says, man, at this point, I need the evidence presentation like Utah did. I want to know everything that led them to BK. The presentation really has me with a fine tooth comb how law enforcement investigates, plus comes to a solid conclusion on a suspect. Yeah, they actually gave a lot for that probable cause affidavit. Amy, thank you for the super chat. Matt Bond, thank you for the super chat. Says, if they found a shoe print, there will be blood on a carpet and pedals in the car. But apparently now they're saying he cleaned out that car. Stukins, thank you so much for the 20-month membership. You're the best, Mel. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I was the youngest medical legal death investigator in the country. The world that I inhabited gave me insight into things that
We have touchdown. That's right. The suspect in the murders of 4 Idaho University students has touched down in the jurisdiction where this case will go to a jury trial. Now what? I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. First of all, take a listen to our friends at KREM2.
Bryan Kohberger touching down to the Pullman-Moscow Regional Airport just after 6 tonight on board a Pennsylvania State Police plane which traveled across the country, a day after Kohberger waived extradition. The 28-year-old murder suspect wearing a black coat over his red jumpsuit spent less than a minute on the tarmac, moving from the single-engine plane to a sheriff's pickup truck. The windows inside were covered up. That truck was escorted from the airport through downtown Moscow. Kohberger arrived at the jail within a matter of minutes. We saw a garage door open and immediately close once the pickup was inside. A large crowd of students and Moscow residents gathered to watch. Less than an hour after landing on the Palouse, Kohberger was booked into the Latah County Jail, charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary. He's currently being held without bond.
It has all happened so incredibly quickly. 47 days went by from the time of the murders of those 4 beautiful young Idaho University students until the time of an arrest. And we're learning a lot about that arrest and the intense tracking conducted by not only local police, but the FBI as well, as they tracked the suspect, Kohberger, across the country, 2,500 miles in the Elantra that had been sought after by law enforcement all across this country. But what we know right now is that Kohberger was flown on a 14-seater Pilatus across the country, a private plane that apparently belonged to Pennsylvania State Police. It touched down once in Champaign, Illinois at a fixed operation flight service.
Hold up. So guys, something just happened, right? I want to talk to you for a second. So this podcast that we're listening to, right? I feel like she's kind of recapping, right? Capping. But I just went to check. Oh shit. I just went to check because I feel like this is old, even though this is from yesterday. How about we just skip that shit and go to the newest one that just dropped now? Let's get to it. The affidavit. Jaw-dropping details emerge in Idaho student murders. Let's watch that. Because we don't want to hear about the flight. We've been talking about this flight shit forever. Let's talk about the new shit. Let's get it. Let's do it. I like the title better, too.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan.
Let's go.
I was the youngest medical.
We ain't gotta listen to that airplane shit from yesterday.
On and on.
Let's go.
Police now believe and reveal that they say Bryan Kohberger stalked the 4 victims all the way back until June, watching them at odd hours, late in the night and early in the morning hours, very similar to the times the murders took place. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. This probable cause affidavit has also spun out more questions than answers. For instance, take a listen to our friends at King 5.
The first thing coming out of this is that one of the surviving roommates in that home tells investigators she was woken up by the sound of crying and saw a masked man dressed in black walk right by her. Another big takeaway is that investigators say DNA was found on a knife sheath found at the crime scene. A small piece of DNA was found on there, and then DNA taken from Kohberger's family home in Pennsylvania was matched to that knife sheath, they say, with more than 99.9% accuracy.
99.9998% accuracy, excluding all other possibilities that DNA came from anyone other than.
And I saw in the chat.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan.
No!
I was a
DNA to cell phones here at Fox Nation and
state DNA was found on
other than.
More questions than answers. Do you think that the affidavit, the criminal, I don't think it did. It did make more questions, but I don't know that more questions than answers. I think they gave a lot of answers, quite a bit of answers, but there's still missing pieces, obviously. Valley Girl says his appearance in court is strange. No respect for women. Slight smirk at the lawyer. No saying yes, ma'am. Just yes. When his lawyer talks, he doesn't look at her. Sometimes his eyes roll at the judge while she talks. Just me, question mark. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know, let's see what the chat says.
The killer's biological father. Again, thank you for being with us here at Crime Stories. We've got an all-star panel to make sense of what we are learning now from a bombshell document. But first, I want to go to a very special guest joining us, Laura Ingle, senior correspondent, Fox News. You can find her on Twitter at Laura Ingle. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. What we were just playing from King 5 really lets the cat out of a bag regarding one of the roommates, Dylan, one of the roommates that lived. Do you see the, let me just say, inconsistency in her statement? Not that she's inconsistent, but it's inconsistent with what we think we know. All right. Because we've been led to believe that she and another roommate lived on the bottom floor.
Right.
With two roommates on the second floor, other room on the third floor. But if she is on the bottom floor, Laura Ingle, then how did she see the perp dressed all in black, 5'10" or taller, bushy eyebrows, face over nose and mouth, athletic? How did she see him go out the sliding glass door if she's on the bottom floor?
You're right. I mean, this probable cause affidavit gives us these new chilling details of these ambush murders. I mean, things that answers a lot of questions and leaves a lot unanswered still. So the person identified in the probable cause affidavit, only identified as DM, that we realize is one of the surviving roommates, Dylan Morganson, describes 3 times in that night. Remember, police originally told us that the 2 surviving roommates slept through it all. And, you know, the 911 call didn't come till just before noon that day, that there was an unconscious person at the residence. But now we see that this surviving roommate came in contact, but saw the suspect in the house, but first heard a noise thinking that it was maybe Kaylee playing with her dog, then heard what sounded like crying. She opened her door 3 times, and on that 3rd time, she says that she saw a suspect dressed head to toe in black, wearing a mask, only revealing bushy eyebrows, walk right by her, and then exit through the kitchen to the sliding glass door and exit. That only makes sense if she came upstairs from the ground floor, which is where we heard she was sleeping, or there's another bedroom that we maybe didn't know about, that she was on that 2nd floor. That's a huge question going along with if she encounters this person at between 4 and 4:30 a.m., why a 911 call was not made until nearly noon. But my question, Nancy, is this. Remember, the call was, there's an unconscious person. Did the other roommate, did she pass out? Did she go into hiding? Was she in that frozen state of shock that she said that's what she stood there in shock when she saw the person? You could only imagine how terrifying that would have been. But why that time gap? That is one of the biggest takeaways of this probable cause affidavit, why that call was not made.
You're hearing the voice of Laura Ingle, senior correspondent with the Fox News Channel, joining us. She has been on the ground from the get-go on this case. Laura, if you would you go through, and to me right now, this is the main fly in the ointment after hearing about, reading that probable cause affidavit. Would you explain everything you know to this juncture about what the roommate, Dylan Morganson, said? And we learned this from probable cause. And remember, there may be a lot more, and there may be a very easy explanation about what we're talking about to answer this question. Was she sleeping on the 2nd floor? Was she somewhere other than the bottom floor? Why didn't she call 911 immediately? Did the defendant see her? There's no indication that he did. So many questions, but remember, a probable cause affidavit is literally, think of a skeleton, what all it's missing. The eyes, the eyebrows, the skin, the face, the hair, everything. It's a bare bones outline for a judge, just enough evidence so the judge will sign an arrest warrant. Okay? They don't give the judge the whole file that explains everything. They give a bare bones affidavit. They get that warrant and bam, they go make the arrest. But for everybody else, I want to hear Laura Ingle explain what we know right now about DM. That's how she's referred to in the PC affidavit, still in Morganson. What exactly did she say, Laura Ingalls?
She told police, and one other nugget here that I didn't know either, and I don't think anybody did, is that Xana Kernodle received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. That is new. And that she was awake, according to her phone records, at approximately 4:12 because her phone, Xana Kernodle, who lived on the second floor, was likely awake using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12.
Okay, whoa. Laura Ingle, you got me drinking from the fire hydrant. Again, too much, too fast. Because I want to cross-reference something. His car, a white Elantra, was spotted by other surveillance video in the King Road area between 3:29 and 4:20. Videos from the King Road area that night. Or is it 4 to 4:25? Actually, I think it's both. So what we're hearing right now about the DoorDash and the TikToks fit in perfectly with the surveillance video from the King Road area. You just have to lay on one layer after the next to build this case. Okay, back to Laura Ingle.
All right.
Slow it down, lady. Tell me again everything we know about roommate DM.
So when we go to page 4 of the probable cause affidavit, DM stated that she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she woke up at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Goncalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which was located on the third floor. And that is what I'm referencing. That is the first time I have seen or heard that her bedroom was on the second floor.
Or wait a minute, could she have just been sleeping there on a sofa?
Sure. But it says in the affidavit, she stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor.
Yeah,
That's what it says on page 4 at the top. DM stated she was awoken at 4 a.m. She thought she heard Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs on the third floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Goncalves say something to the effect of, quote, "There's someone here." A review of the records obtained from a forensic download of Xana Kernodle's phone showed this also could have been Kernodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12. So I'm not sure if they're saying that voice could have been, "There's someone here," coming from her phone. Nonetheless, that is what she heard. And then she states to police that she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. She stated she opened her door for a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Kernodle's room. She said she heard a male voice saying something to the effect of, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," end quote. Then, at approximately 4:17, a security camera located on King Road, which is immediately to the northwest of 1112 King Road, picked up a distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. That security camera, which is next door, less than 50 feet from the west wall of Kernodle's bedroom. And then finally, the most chilling part, DM stated she opened her door a third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. Described the figure as about 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built, with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a, quote, frozen shock phase. The male walked toward the back sliding glass door. She then locked herself in her room after seeing the male. She did not recognize the male, and this leads investigators to believe the murderer left the scene.
You are hearing Laura Ingle, senior correspondent with Fox News Channel, breaking down what we know about DM's testimony, what we know she saw, what she heard, what she experienced the night her roommates were murdered.
Fox Nation exclusive.
An international pop star stripped of human rights. How does that happen? Easier than you think. Join us for a deep dive into Britney Spears' conservatorship. Trapped, streaming now on Fox Nation.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan. I was the youngest medical legal death investigator in the country standing. And for me...
Stories with Nancy Grace.
Straight out to Cheryl McComb joining us, founder and director of the Cold Case Research Institute. You can find her at coldcasecrimes.org. Cheryl, what do you make of it?
It sounds like to me that the murder started on the third floor, which is really curious to me, because if you've got DoorDash coming at 4, she's on TikTok at 4:12 on the second floor.
Do me a favor, use proper names so we all know she who. Go ahead, start over, please.
Okay. Well, again, if you've got Dylan hearing dogs barking, hearing the crying, having this strange person talking to her between 4:12 and 4:17, and then you've got the car that we all knew to look for, the white Elantra at 4:20, leaving at a high rate of speed. It sounds to me like Dylan at 4 o'clock heard something on the third floor that she thought was Kaylee playing with her dog. But again, whatever was occurring on the second floor between 4 and 4:12 to me is critical. So it sounds like this started on the third floor with Kaylee.
Straight out to Joe Scott Morgan joining us, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, and star of Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan. What do you make of Cheryl's interpretation of the timeline?
There's one piece of evidence here that I think gives an indication that it's third floor.
It started on the third floor.
Yes, it started on the third floor, and the indication of that is a single piece of evidence, which is, in fact, the sheath that was found adjacent, according to the affidavit, to Megan's body in the bed right there. And the fact that the knife was unsheathed in that area and left behind gives an indication that that's where it's.
I guess that indicates that. I mean, because also he could have unsheathed and started on the second floor and then came back upstairs. Then that's when it came undone. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's an indicator. I'm not sure that's a definitive indicator. But.
Started, at least to me, that's a place to begin. And then after it was done, these homicides were committed on the third floor. The progression goes down to the second floor. Where Ethan and Xana were.
Guys, I'm just trying to take in everything that happened to these young people that night. Think about it. My twins just turned 15. These victims are just a few years older than them. In their beds. No idea what was to befall them. And now we hear Bryan Kohberger had been around them on their perimeter over and over and over, watching them, stalking them. In the last hours, Kohberger in court. Take a listen to our cut 245, King 5.
Bryan Kohberger was in court. He was in an orange jumpsuit, but was not in any type of handcuffs or shackles that we could see. He just said a few brief words responding to judges' questions. And here's what came out of this morning's court appearance. He was formally charged with 4 counts of murder, 1 count of burglary. But the big takeaway is that due to Idaho law, once he makes that appearance in court.
And I said here in the affidavit that, you know, this guy, the records for 8458 phone show that the 8458 phone utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to 11/13 All these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours. Yeah, was he sitting out there? Was he propped up in the back area of that house or whatever, in the trees and shit? Loving Life, thanks for the super chat, says Dylan was afraid he'd come back. He did at 9:12 a.m. Maybe so. That's a possibility too, yeah. She could have been afraid that like maybe this guy's gonna come back, and she just froze and just stayed put, hiding. Airdrie, thank you for the super chat, says we can't judge the M. She has to live with this. Hashtag Team DM. KJ, thank you for the super chat, says Mel, you have the best mods, members, and all thing iCkEdMeL related. Amazing. Got a job but listening. And great weekend. Stay safe all. Thank you. Drive safe. I hope you enjoy. Hopefully I can make your ride more bearable. Yeah, and thank you so much to the mods, man, for helping me out, holding me down. Thank you to all the people on Discord. Thank you so much for the support over there. And if you guys could hit like on the stream, I'd appreciate it. Subscribe, turn on the bell notifications. Also, my channel is sponsored by Swagit, so make sure you click the link. We're doing another giveaway at the end of the month. All you have to do is click the link, download the app, follow me on there. I'm going to start, I posted something yesterday, but I'm going to start posting more again. I need to get back on that. So check me out on Swagit. We're doing a $500 giveaway from Swagit. I might do another 500 myself as well for the people that are on the YouTube chat. So super easy to do. It's a video platform where you can earn swag bucks, and it's US based only, but they're expanding, and you earn swag bucks, which you can convert to gift cards. I recently cashed out $200 myself. And so, and it's if you have currently the app, make sure you have the latest update because they put out a bunch of fixes.
The probable cause documents are then made public. That's essentially a paper that's written by law enforcement laying out their case as to why they believe this is their man in this murder investigation.
Straight out to a special guest joining us in addition to Laura Engel from Fox News. CC Moore is with us. And to the rest of the panel, I'm getting to you as quickly as I can, but please jump in when you have a thought. CC Moore is, well, she's brilliant. She's chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs. CC, I want you to address this. The first time I used a statistic like this in court with DNA trying to prove a case, it's, an astronomical, a fantastical number. But the number is, and this is what we know, and anybody on the panel can backtrack on this after CC answers. We know that team that was watching Kohberger as he crisscrossed the country to go back home 2,500 miles from Idaho to the Poconos with his dad in the Elantra in question. They had two tasks. One, to keep eyes on Kohberger. So the moment that arrest warrant issued, they could effect an arrest when the time was right. This is what was called a highly at-risk arrest. It's called a dynamic entry. When the person you're going to arrest could really do anything, you got to be ready. Keep eyes on him and to secure DNA. Okay? And this is how they did it. We learned from the affidavit. They watched Bryan Kohberger at his parents' Pennsylvania home. They saw him leave the home. Did you know this, Jack and Sid? They see him leave the home around 4 a.m. in the dark of the night, taking out the trash. Now, I took out the trash this morning at 5 a.m., but that's just me. But here's the kicker. I didn't put it in the neighbor's in their dumpster. He did. He took the family trash to the neighbors and put the trash in their trash can. He also put some in their own trash can later. So why would he do that? Well, of course, they went right over there and got it out. And guess what, CC Moore? It proves that the DNA on the snap button of that knife hilt, the DNA found there, the male DNA, compared to the trash from the Kohberger family home, all the male population of the world is excluded to 99.9998%. Could you explain that, CC?
Yes. So these are numbers, as you know, that we see in court. This is court admissible evidence, but it is also what we see in traditional paternity tests. So anytime someone is taking a paternity test, they're doing the exact same type of comparison that they did here. And those are the numbers that are court admissible in those cases as well, when you're trying to establish paternity. But that is not the final step. Once they have gotten that DNA to that crime lab, realized, okay, this is a male DNA, but it's not our suspect. This is the father of our suspect. The next step would be, after they get that warrant for arrest and they get Bryan in custody, they want to get his DNA directly from him. That is going to be the final step of the DNA testing and evidence. And once they get that exact match from Bryan, they're going to have numbers similar to what they quoted for that paternity test certainty. And then that will be set aside. So we're seeing multiple steps of the DNA testing here, getting closer and closer, and the noose is tightening.
CeCe Moore, you're the brilliant genetic genealogist. There's got to be a better way to say it than I said it, because I had a really lengthy, circuitous sentence to try to explain this stat. What I'm trying to say, and I would have to work on this before I went to a jury, Jack, absolutely. I'm trying to say that it's 99.9998 to 1 that this DNA comes from anybody but the killer's bio dad. What's an easy way to say that?
You're never going to hear them say 100%. That's just not how the scientists present this type of evidence. They're saying he cannot be excluded as the father or the parent of the suspect or of the person who left the DNA behind at the crime scene. And so these numbers are astronomical. Like you said, it is greater than the number of people in the whole world many times over. And so it's just their way of explaining the level of confidence that they have in this. But it is not going to be what it will be used in court eventually. That's all they needed to get this arrest done. And they may have more DNA evidence that they just didn't list in the affidavit because it wasn't necessary. As you said, they're just going to lay out what they need to get that next step without showing all their cards immediately.
Joining me also, Bryan Fitzgibbon, VP Operations, USPA Nationwide Security. Bryan, I want you to hear something. It ups the creepy factor, if that's even possible. Take a listen to our cut 247, Sebastian Robertson.
The suspect's phone was used at least a dozen times near the suspect's home ahead of the murders, and notably, investigators say the phone was turned off at the time of the killings.
It's obviously an emotional time for the family, seeing the defendant for the first time. This is the beginning of the criminal justice system, and the family will be here for the long haul.
The suspect's phone was used at least, and I emphasize at least, 12 times near the victim's home, beginning back in June up until November 13, the day of the murders. Can you just imagine that, Fitzgibbons?
Well, I'll tell you, Nancy, it's similar to him leaving behind the sheath. That data exhaust from these 12 trips that he took to the murder site previously that they were able to obtain through that historical cell site location information is going to be a key part of this case. And it's important for everybody to know that that cellular analysis survey team that the FBI has, that data that they have is very precise, very accurate. That look back period where they're able to see Kohberger's phone in the vicinity of the King Road residence is going to be tremendously impactful as this thing moves forward.
Joining me, in addition to Laura Engel, Cheryl McCollum, Joe Scott, Bryan Fitzgibbons, joining me right now, Chris and CeCe Moore. Chris McDonough is with us, Director, Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective. I found him on a YouTube channel, The Interview Room. Chris McDonough, I want to go to you because you've carefully examined all around the victim's King Road home. What do you make of what Laura Engel is telling us about the possibility that roommate DM Dylan Morganson was on the second floor? And what do you make of the defendant being around their perimeter 12 times at very odd times of the day and night? And significantly, Jack, is that he has his cell phone on all the time, except he turns it off a couple of hours at the time of the murder or puts it on airplane mode. I love it when they do that. Jump in.
Well, a couple things jump out, Nancy, right away. Is his undergraduate degree is in psychology and cloud-based forensics. So, and he was signing up for an internship with the local PD to teach him about how to avoid, how criminals avoid detection in that. Something else that is really bothering me is the fact that the police have now identified this homicide goes down between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. The fact that these 12 contacts, which we would call pre-incident behaviors, occur through the cell phone analysis is exactly what we've been talking about here on this panel in your show, Nancy, is this guy spent a lot of time taking a look at his target set. And that brings me then to Dylan. This child, there's one part of the affidavit that just stuck out to me, where the officer says she stood in a frozen shock phase. What that told me, writing many affidavits through my career, is this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to get those explanations as to why there was a delay, as well as the hideous statement by the suspect that she hears, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." I did the little boy in Southern California in 1998, Matthew Checki, in the bathroom. The suspect stood behind him and says, "You know me, I'm here to kill you." Wow. I got chills when I read this statement from this witness, because I can only imagine the shock, the fear, the terror in her mind. And then later to find out there's a footprint at her bedroom door from this suspect. So did he come back in after she closed the door to finish the deal, or get the sheet that he left behind on the third floor?
Something you said, Chris McDonough, I think needs to be emphasized even more so. Everyone is ready to put a lynch mob on the roommate, DM, Dylan Morganson, for hiding in her bedroom. She's a child. I think many of these victims were very sheltered. This was the first time they had lived away from home. And when she says, "I was in a frozen shock state," you refer to a case I know very well, the case of a little boy in California named Matthew Checki. As I recall, he was about 9 years old, and he was at a family picnic reunion sort of deal on the ocean, and he wanted to go to the bathroom, and his aunt said, "Oh, I'll go," and they went to the public bathroom. Everything was fine. And the aunt stood outside the door, and in those few moments, a guy goes in and slashes Matthew's neck. Just never had met him, didn't know anything about him, just went in and murdered him. Matthew Checki. Straight out to Dr. Bethany Marshall, psychoanalyst joining us out of Beverly Hills at drbethanymarshall.com. Dr. Bethany, everyone is screaming the PC doesn't show the motive. Well, it doesn't have to, number one. And number two, that is not the state's burden to figure out, wow, why would you do such a thing? We could talk about that at the water cooler. The state's duty is to get the right person in the right jurisdiction and try them according to the Constitution and get a true verdict. That is the state's duty. They're not shrinks. But while we're on it, what do you think? I'm beginning to wonder if this was, he would do these odd experiments, questionnaires, if this was just another one of his bizarre experiments with human guinea pigs. Or was he so immersed in the world of murder that it consumed him?
I think you just explained the whole motivation right there. He was immersed in the world of murder. But let me roll out one simple fact here. There are 8 factors that are associated with serial killers. When you look at their history, childhood abuse and neglect, torturing animals, I could go on. But one factor is voyeurism. Almost all serial killers stalk their victims, and they are voyeurs, meaning they're like peeping toms. And they don't just look and, scroll TikTok and Instagram. They look and masturbate, Nancy. Let's just be honest here. They are in a sexual frenzy while they are stalking their victims. That is it right there. So the crime began last June. It wasn't just when he was plunging a knife into his victims. That was just the cherry on the ice cream sundae right there. The crime started in June when he selected these 4 victims. Victim selection is so important to serial killers. That's where the excitement is. Watching, stalking, looking, masturbating, peeping, learning everything about the victims, inserting themselves into their crime. And it was during this time that he put out these strange, odd questionnaires, wondering, asking even a prison population, what were you thinking before, during, after the crime? How did you engage in victim selection? Because he was engaging in victim selection. So while we might find semen at the crime, I think what we're going to find is all the sexual activity and motivation occurred before the crime. And then killing them was just like the final coup de grace. That was the end of it. So this is a sad thing about this case is the crime went on for months and months and months, and there was no way to detect it, and there was no way to have detected it. We're just putting the pieces together after the fact. And just a quick comment about the poor roommate who saw him with the bushy eyebrows and the athletic build. Yes, she's just a child. She had no idea. She didn't know what we know now. She had no way to put the pieces together. She's just a little girl who shut her door and was used to people coming in and out of that house because, remember, this is a college town, so kids come in all hours of the day or night partying and even just sitting up on their beds and talking. And yes, she was scared, but it was 4 a.m. Of course, she locked the door and went to bed. That is no surprise.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan. I was the youngest medical legal death investigator in the country.
Whoa.
And for me,
Nancy Grace.
With me, high-profile law.
Deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought.
Cases, but the law.
I've kind of I don't know, man. Like I was thinking about this today and like a couple of days ago, where like I was, well, actually, even last night. Last night I had like this eerie feeling because I was thinking about this case, and like as I went to sleep, I was thinking like, I don't know, I just had the thought of what happened to these girls, and like, what if somebody creeped in here? You know what I'm saying? Like I just started thinking that, like, and have I checked all the I don't know, the closets, and like that kind of stuff runs through your head. And then the other morning, when I first woke up, because I feel like we do somewhat desensitize and we're just caught up in the story and all that stuff, but I woke up the other morning and I just had just the thought of like somebody coming in and doing that, while you're sleeping or running up on you, you know what I'm saying? Like it just it was kind of like a disgusting feeling just to think what happened, I don't know. Yeah, I had that thought like 2 times recently. I try not to think about that, but it was like, damn. It is gruesome what this guy did, I was kind of just thinking like, yeah, I don't know. You gotta like, let's see what the chat is saying. So we're gonna finish this. It's almost done. I think there's 6 minutes left. We're gonna there's some videos that News Nation came out with, which we'll listen to. TikTok lady, which I'm not even gonna play her stuff, but They say she's going in. She hasn't really posted on her main profile, but I think that like she has all these other profiles. I don't know if they stopped her from posting on that profile temporarily, maybe, or I don't know what's going on. But she's talking about the police now. There's corruption, and Moscow Police Department is willing to impede justice, and blah blah blah. The woman's still going and going and going and going.
Law is very clear based on case precedent. It's not in the Constitution, but it is a result of the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. When you have a death penalty case and you are selecting your defense team, the defense team, if the state is appointing lawyers, has to be made up of at least one, if not more, death penalty qualified lawyers. Explain.
Those lawyers are specially trained to deal with these kinds of cases, and they have very thorough training. It takes probably a year and a half of additional training in order to represent people charged with a capital offense, an offense that could end up in the death penalty. And these cases take quite a while to pursue and prosecute. And the defense team also has the same requirement. So this is something, if he in fact goes to trial and he's not given a deal to plead to life instead of the death penalty, then the result could well be that the trial will take a number of years to process.
I don't know if it's going to take a number of years, but I could easily see it taking a year. Remember, this is Idaho, not California or New York. This case is going to go to trial. COVID is not a threat at this juncture anyway to striking a jury. COVID has put the skids on jury selection for years now, but we're in a different phase. Jurors are being called to the courthouse. We're not on hold because of COVID. Another thing, take a listen to our cut 251. Again, this is Judge Marshall speaking.
And Mr. Kohberger, would you like to represent yourself, hire a lawyer, or see if you qualify for court-appointed counsel?
I have court-appointed counsel.
Court has reviewed your application for attorney at public expense. I do find that you are indigent and do qualify for court-appointed counsel. I will appoint Ms. Taylor to represent you in this case.
So you may wonder where all your tax dollars go. To people like Bryan Kohberger, we're going to pay for his death penalty defense team. Now, before he even left Pennsylvania, a defense lawyer was in place for him, and it is defense attorney Ann Taylor. Now, what Dale Carson said is absolutely correct. To achieve further death penalty qualifications to defend or prosecute a case like that, the most common way of getting that training is to sit a second or third chair when another lawyer that's qualified tries a DP case, death penalty case. I'm pretty sure if you could check it, Sid, that the mode of death will be the needle in Idaho, death by lethal injection. Straight back out to Laura Ingle, senior correspondent joining us from Fox News. Laura, again, thank you for being with us. Laura, what do you believe will happen next?
Well, you know, his bail was denied in that court hearing, and then he'll make his next appearance on the 12th of this month. So that is the next time we expect him back in court. And as we continue to pore over this affidavit, not only the probable cause affidavit, when you go back and you look at that Indiana State Police body cam footage of when he was stopped, and we've seen it, we can't help but study it because we hear him and we see him. And if you look closely at one of those traffic stops by the Indiana State Police as he was traveling with his father from the state of Washington to Pennsylvania, where we were camped out outside of the jail where he was held, you can't help but notice there is a mark on his right wrist. And we've looked at that closely. It looks fresh, so I don't know what that means. But, you know, that is another clue. His demeanor, his voice, that is something that will be, of course, heavily analyzed by law enforcement and by all of us.
Joe Scott Morgan joining me, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University. Joe Scott, we also learned that the defendant, Kohberger, thoroughly clean his car on multiple occasions. He was watched doing it. You think he got rid of all the evidence? If so, why? And if not, why?
No, absolutely not. There's no way. I don't care how much he thinks he cleaned it. He did not do a sufficient job compared to what they're doing to it in the garage right now at probably the FBI in Pennsylvania at one of their evidence collection sites. They're taking this car apart, literally. They're taking the seats out, carpet, headliner, everything, and they're going in with every possible agent that they have at their disposal. And I don't mean FBI agents. I'm talking about chemicals that they can place. We're talking about luminol, maybe Blue Star. They're also going through here with probably evidence vacuums as well, which goes down to a different strata, can pull things up that this guy would have missed.
And to you, Cece Moore, joining us, Chief Genetic Genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, was the best way, and I'm not saying it's going to work, but what do you expect to be the attack by the defense on the DNA?
Well, they're not going to use anything that was found from investigative genetic genealogy, if that is still in play. I think it is. I think they just left it out of the affidavit because it was just a lead generator. It's not evidence. So they're going to focus on those astronomical numbers that you mentioned. They're going to say this DNA on this sheath or whatever else they may have in their evidence from DNA is from this person. In the stats will be something like 1 in 300 trillion chance. And then maybe they'll find some of the victim's DNA and all that work that they are doing on his car.
I'm saying, how is the defense going to attack the DNA analysis?
Well, the defense is going to have a difficult time with all of this evidence adding up.
Come on, Cece, put it out there. They're going to have to pull an OJ. They're going to have to come up with some crazy theory that the blood was planted, that it was tampered with, that it has been somehow compromised. That's the only way. You can't fight with 1 in 300 trillion.
Well, that sheath could have been placed there. And it's
there we go. See, didn't take long. You know what, CC Moore? I shouldn't have asked you that question because in order to catch a varmint, you got to think like a varmint, and you just don't think like a defense lawyer.
All right, so let's talk about the type of DNA on that sheet.
In a nutshell,
that DNA is likely to be touch DNA, few skin cells, and they're going to say it could have been transferred, it could have been there for a different reason, and it doesn't necessarily place him at the crime scene.
Cece, I only hope that's what they argue.
They're going to say this was a party house and kids were coming in and out all the time, and Kohberger was likely a guest or just some random person that came in to party with the kids, and that's when the DNA was left.
On a knife. Okay. See, I hope that's what they argue. Brian Fitzgibbon's with us, VP of Operations at USPA Nationwide Security. Brian, I'm just trying to, if you want to win, you don't just put your case up. You lay awake at night and you think, what are they going to do? How are they going to try to attack me? And you go through each witness and each piece of evidence with a fine-tooth comb and you figure out, what's my problem? Where's my crack? How can I shoot them down before they can kill me? Hey, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Reagan came up with the Star Wars defense, how we're going to shoot down missiles that are coming toward the U.S.? And everybody at the time thought, wow, impossible. It is possible. And this is how you win a trial. You shoot them down before they can torpedo you. What is the defense going to do, Brian?
I think one of the pieces that they're going to attack is the cell phone data. Not all cell phone data is created equal. I think in this case, there was definitely a flex in the affidavit showing that FBI team involved here and the precise locations they were able to grab from Kohberger in that historical data. But that's a definite that they will attack that in the past. And certainly in some high profile cases in the past, cell phone data can be misleading. So I think that there's definitely going to be an attack on that.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Brian Fitzgibbons. They're going to be all over that cell phone data. We wait as this case unfolds. Goodbye, friend.
The
The economy is crazy right now. All-time high inflation,
And that's
bearish stock market.
All right. Let me get the super chats. We can listen to some of the things, some of the new News Nation clips. Read the chat, get some of your thoughts, man. Infamous Truth Teller says those traffic stops were methodically planned out to be able to get a view of his hands. And if there's any wounds, they were going to get on. That's why there was a second stop. The FBI denied that, though. And I purposely saved the tab. Wait, did I? Purposely saved the tab because I knew that was going to come up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to have this tab on forever. Even when we start covering different stories. No, this is what came out. You know, people still don't believe it. You know, people, it's up to you guys. Whatever you want to take. I don't know. At first, it was reported, and I've said this multiple times already, that the FBI did do this on purpose. Now it's being reported that the FBI disputes this and that they didn't direct the agency, Indiana ISP, to pull over this guy twice. They're saying it's not true. Some people say, oh, well, they still don't believe it, and they're just saying that because it would be bad for the case. We actually talked about this last night. If you didn't see last night's stream with Maven, an attorney with 23 years, I believe, experience, don't quote me. She's amazing. We talked about this and how it would have been bad for the case if they had directed him, these police, to stop him. It's Kohberger. And apparently they're going to accommodate his vegan diet. Okay. They're not going to do the pots and pans, though. That's like, I guess they kind of draw the line with that one. But they're going to come up with some specialty stuff for him to eat, I guess, to accommodate his diet and so that he's comfortable. Or maybe that's also so he can't try to claim that they violated his rights or something like that. So maybe they want to at least try to stop this guy from kind of coming out with any kind of excuse. There was this clip that just came out. Oh, so as far as the whole evidence of a sex crime being overlooked, Banfield was talking about this last night. You know, they said there was no SA, but now that they mentioned it on the Nancy Grace thing, there was somebody, I guess it was an interesting conversation.
Welcome back. From a cell phone data trail to the multiple sightings of a white Hyundai Elantra to the sheath of a still missing knife that's believed to be the murder weapon. If Bryan Kohberger is in fact the killer, he seems to have given police pretty much a roadmap right to his front door. And this is a man who was working towards a PhD in criminology. Again, if he's guilty, what happened? Was he blinded by passion or frightened out of his wits, or did he want to get caught? I'm joined now by someone who has tackled these questions before in actually thousands of other cases, from Lacey Peterson to J.C. Dugard. But Paul Holes is most famous as the former cold case.
He was only there for 15 minutes. Yeah, no, I don't think that he AR'd somebody. I don't think that they said that he didn't. But if you listen to this this conversation that they had, he was just alluding to, kind of like in the podcast, that it's not always that there's something directly sexual involved. Sometimes there's other components, kind of like the person on that. And it's kind of graphic, you know, to talk about this, but the person on Nancy Grace's podcast alluded to maybe these people, when they're stalking, they could be getting off just from stalking, you know.
Case investigator.
It's I don't know if it's reaching or not, but that's what they're talking about.
Who helped take down the Golden State Killer after decades on the loose. He is the author of the memoir Unmasked. Paul, I thought of you right away. We expected so little evidence in this affidavit, and it was a cascade of, frankly, mystery upon mystery, and yet we do have what we have. And what we have is that there was a bolo, a be on the lookout for a white Elantra on November 25th. And they had his license with, you know, the snap of the knife sheath that day. I don't understand how it takes so long. I don't know your business, investigators, but help me.
Well, you have to understand that the affidavit is really a retrospective. And so the detective who's writing it is writing chronological order on when information came in. But when you start talking about this bolo for the white Hyundai Elantra, you have to understand that when they are initially investigating, they don't even have a license plate for this Elantra. So when they are now gathering data going to the state's DMV and reaching out to other law enforcement agencies and their databases. They're getting thousands of bits of information of different registered owners of white Hyundai Elantras. Now, maybe Bryan Kohberger's name was in that list, but they didn't know that he was the killer at that point in time. At the same time, you have this parallel process going on with the lab processing evidence, and it takes time. Now, they shockingly had this knife sheath that was left behind that ultimately had Kohberger's DNA on it, which is just, for me, it's just crazy that they had such great evidence. But it takes time to go through to process not only the DNA from this sheath, but they have mountains of other evidence in the case that the lab is probably working in batches. So it probably took some time, 7 days, 10 days before they get their initial DNA results back. So they are juggling multiple things that take time. And ultimately, the stars aligned. The DNA added up. They had a suspect who had a white Hyundai Elantra. And then as they dug further, circumstantial evidence really cemented the case.
So that it's fascinating. I'm looking at this timeline, and I've picked it all apart and made crazy notes looking through the affidavit. But November 29th, a Washington State University police officer gets an Elantra and takes it right to Kohberger's apartment. He sees that there's this Elantra. The Bolo's been out for 5 days, and 4 days, and he sees this one at Kohberger's apartment. So he can read the plate, and he says it's a Pennsylvania plate. If you were to look at that plate, you got a stop on August 21st where there is body cam video with a guy with bushy eyebrows. And
what she said?
If you were to look at that plate, you got a stop on August 21st where
she said August 21st, but I think she meant to say this was December 15th.
There is body cam video with a guy with bushy eyebrows.
Oh, they're just showing the December 15 one here, though.
And we know from day one that Dylan Mortensen said the guy in my house that night had bushy eyebrows. Then you get a second body cam, and that's on October 14th. And that one...
They're just showing the December 15th, but she's talking about the other.
This one was also Washington State University officers, and there is body cam, presumably to show bushy eyebrows. So you have two videos there, plus a license, a driver's license, that gives a description exactly of the person that Dylan Mortensen described to the police. But then it looks like they didn't ask for the phone records, the historical phone records of this suspect, because he'd given his phone number during one of those traffic stops, right? He gave them his phone number during the August 21st. They didn't start looking for historics on that until December 23rd. That to me is a bit of a surprise.
Well, and again, I think this is where, the confusion comes in as you have this Washington State University cop who sees this white Hyundai Elantra. But this is one of many tips that law enforcement is fielding at the time. So until they have something that causes them to focus on Kohberger, they're having to try to sort through all of these tips. Just because you have footage showing that you have a male that has bushy eyebrows, that isn't going to be sufficient to cause law enforcement to disregard all the other tips. This is where I believe that there's a likelihood that they had other more advanced DNA technology that was utilized that helped them focus in on Kohberger. And then once they focused in based on that kind of technology, now they started adding things up. Oh, he drives a white Elantra. Now you get the body cam footage. Now you get the cell phone records and the circumstances.
Kohberger applied for an internship at the Pullman, Washington Police Department just in the fall, just a couple months ago. So presumably it is sometime around the murder, right? The murder's on November 13th, and sometime in the fall he's applying to be an intern with the cops, and the Golden State Killer is, of course, a cop, and of course the familial DNA that you worked to find him. Did you have that flashback?
No, absolutely. There are parallels here with Kohberger and D'Angelo. D'Angelo went to school and got his degree in criminal justice. He became an intern at Roseville PD, and then ultimately was a cop while he's committing fetish burgs and numerous sexual assaults in Northern California. Here, Kohberger's doing the same thing. In addition, look at the crime that Kohberger has been accused of. It's going into a residence at a time when the occupants are likely going to be asleep or falling asleep, and then killing them. That's exactly what the Golden State Killer was doing. I would not be surprised if Kohberger actually studied D'Angelo and the Golden State Killer case.
That is so creepy. So I got to ask you something, because you told me something off air that just shocked me. I only have a minute left. But when when homicide detectives process the body, you said that they sometimes do not look for places where a sex fetish killer will mouth, and they won't think it's a sex crime. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I've seen across the nation, and even in California and jurisdictions next to mine, is when crime scenes are processed and the victims' bodies are processed, they often limit themselves from a sexual assault evidence standpoint to just collecting the 3 orifice swabs, oral, vaginal, rectal. And then if those are negative for just semen, and a pathologist says, I see no injuries to these orifices, they say, well, there's no evidence of sexual assault. But they often don't swab types of evidence that you can't see, such as saliva around the victim's mouth, in their hair, on their neck, on the intimate areas of their body, even down onto their toes or feet, where we sometimes get offender DNA and saliva. So this evidence is often overlooked. I don't know what they did in this case. Maybe they did a great job processing these victims' bodies. However, it wouldn't surprise me that due to the nature of Kohberger's background and the types of victims he's going after, that there's a possibility that there's a sexual component to this crime that was missed.
It is so fascinating. You have got to come back. We have a much longer conversation to have about this, because they said originally no evidence of a sex crime, but I promise you'll come back.
I will be back.
Paul Holes, always good to see you, author of Unmasked.
Okay. There's another little clip that I wanted to listen to. Oh, I forgot to show you guys this too. I wanted to take a look at this. It says here, man who knows Kohberger speaks out.
Murderer. This news came as a shock to people who knew him, and some are now speaking out on changes in his behavior and his personality that push them away. Tonight at 6, Esther Bauer has new details from a father who says both his kids grew up with Kohberger. Esther.
Well, guys, we now know the suspect's family lived in Pennsylvania. The dad I spoke with says when news broke of an arrest, his family was in shock. They still are, and just want justice for the victims.
Quite a few times, Kohberger was actually in my house, and that's a pretty frightening thing to know.
Because Tom Arntz says his kids went to school with Kohberger in Pennsylvania.
He said some things are a little odd with him. He was always like
that's the guy. I feel like this is the father of that girl and the brother. That Arndt's last name. That girl, isn't it Casey Farts? Casey Farts on TikTok. The woman that told her experience that like she alleged that he was, Bryan was high on like heroin in high school. I thought that the brother had a close relationship, and the brother said that I think he was bullied by Bryan.
To be like the number one person in the room.
Over the years, his kids.
I don't know if that's the one that.
Notice changes. Tom says he used to be around 300 pounds, then lost a lot of weight, and that wasn't the only difference.
My son said he changed a little bit, and he got pretty aggressive with him and mean to him and stuff, and my son broke off.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Relations with him. He just never seen him anymore.
The last time the Arntz family saw him was when Kohberger was working as a security guard at a local school a couple years back.
When we talked to him there, everything seemed, normal. He was polite and everything. It was very, very weird to hear this stuff.
Washington State University confirms he was a PhD student at the time of the alleged murder, and Tom adds he was smart.
Very intelligent, and then, he would explain things in like a really odd way that had to be really sophisticated way of explaining stuff.
There is still so much.
And I used to know this guy in a pharmacy that like had to like overcomplicate the simplest conversation. And I think it was to make himself feel like special and better than, and that he can have these, just for the simplest things, like I'm going over here, it would just be like this complicated, long ass conversation of all these words, dictionary shit. Just say what the hell you're saying. Like,
More to explain
overdoing
and
it, you know?
understand in this investigation. It's unsettling for Tom to think about how this person, who they knew for years, could have killed these 4 students.
Just insane.
And police are telling us DNA is what ties Kohberger to this crime. We still do not know a motive or if he knew any of the victims. There are still so many questions, and we are expecting to learn much more if and when that arrest warrant is unsealed. Kirsten?
I want to show that. The other thing, let's see. News Nation got ooh, this is interesting. I want to listen to this. So let's listen to 2 of these things. Let's listen to the short one first. Well, first of all, real quick. Apparently this Uvalde mother, the shooter of the Uvalde, the shooter's mother apparently got arrested for threatening to kill a man.
The mother of the Robb Elementary School shooter was arrested in Oklahoma City after she allegedly threatened to kill a man. That's according to police.
Jail records show Adriana Martinez Reyes was charged with assault and battery and threatening to perform an act of violence. A report from Oklahoma City police states an officer was called to a home after a caller reported Reyes was threatening to kill a man. The man told officers that Reyes became angry with him. A police report states he believed she would attack him in his sleep. Reyes was booked into the Oklahoma County Jail on Wednesday.
Oklahoma City police told KSAT that Reyes confirmed she's the mother of Salvador Ramos, the 18-year-old gunman who opened fire inside Robb Elementary School on May 24th. He killed 19 students and 2 teachers before he was shot by law enforcement.
And that girl, that's her TikTok name, is Casey Farts. She made a video explaining that. I don't know. Okay, here we go. Somebody tagged me. Lolly Holly. Thank you for tagging me on Twitter. The universe of Twitter. What does Twitter have to say? Thread. There's a lot of discussion about DM, the roommate who saw the killer walk by her after the murders, froze, and then locked herself in her room. Steve Goncalves, Kaylee's dad, spoke to NBC about DM, and I will share some of the transcript here. Goncalves, I think it's another victim of this crime. He also said, my heart goes out to her, and she came up to me in different celebrations of life, and she showed herself to me that she didn't behave in a fashion of somebody who was involved in something like this. Goncalves says, I still think that she's just a girl that was scared and froze up. Goncalves says he has more questions about what happened after she locked the door, but those will be answered in time. More details. Goncalves also talked about what happened during the 911 call later that day. You got to remember, those girls were so upset that when they went outside after seeing this, it wasn't very legible. They couldn't quite understand what the girls were seeing. Goncalves says one passed out and the other was hyperventilating, that the message wasn't clear enough for the operator. The comment was about the 911 call. So he says one passed out and the other was hyperventilating. So thanks for that tag. So I guess that's coming out later. This was 3 hours ago. Maggie. Okay.
Used both phone records and crime. Phone was turned 12 times in the months.
I guess the interview is coming out later. Okay. All right. So I wanted to, let me see, get this other clip that I wanted to show you. Oh, and by the way, let's talk about this real quick. I'm all over the place. Forgive me. Now, I'm not saying to come for his family or anything like that, but this is something that a lot of people have talked about. And I guess it's just eerie. I don't know. Bryan Kohberger, sister starred in horror flick about students hacked to death. Director shocked by connection. Kevin Boone, the director of the horror movie starring in the sister of accused Idaho murderer Bryan Kohberger, says she never mentioned her brother during filming, and he was super surprised to find out the two were related. Kevin joined us on TMZ Live. He told us he didn't realize the family connection until he started being contacted by media outlets. The director says the only thing he knew about Bryan's sister's personal life was that Amanda was from Pennsylvania, which is where Bryan was arrested. Kevin tells us Bryan's sister was a joy to work with, and Bryan never came around the movie set as far as he knows. He says he feels really bad for the Kohberger family, especially Amanda. Bryan Kohberger is accused of committing murder that has markings of a horror movie, a movie which is his own sister starred in, or movie that his sister starred in. Amanda Kohberger has a single movie credit. 2 days back, shot in 2011, the premise, a group of students who were viciously stabbed to death with knives and other weapons. That's pretty crazy. The group of environmentally conscious students take a hike in the woods. Their mission is to catch people who are illegally foresting. The murderer befriends the group of students and then begins the massacre. The director, Kevin Boone, was shocked when he learned the connection between Amanda and her brother. You're effing kidding me? Her brother's that guy? Boone told the New York Post he had kind words for Amanda, saying she was a lovely woman who was very nice. I liked her a lot. Wow. So I figure we're just a mention for anybody that didn't know that. It's pretty eerie.
Yeah. Only if I had been arrested, or did you? My first inkling yesterday when media started calling, and it was a journalist that told me about the connection, and I was surprised, as any person would be.
After you made the film, were you in contact with her at all? I know that's her only credit. Your film is the only credit that we see listed for her as an actor. Do you know if she continued in acting?
I think she thought about it. I don't think she went much farther than that. I know it was her first film, or at least I'm pretty sure it was her first film. My whole
it stops every time I pull up. Or click off. Psychiatrist. Let's do this real quick. Psychiatrist analyzes
the arrest affidavit released on suspicion as DM says that she saw a male figure in black clothing and mask. Quote, the male walked past DM as she stood in a frozen shock phase. The male walked towards the backsliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male. DM did not recognize the male.
So they had a psychiatrist on to analyze the roommate's behavior following the Idaho murders. With the roommate stuff, again, man, with the DM person, like they've stated previously, I feel like we're going to get more of those answers once maybe she has to take the stand. Maybe she's going to, people have said shock and all this other stuff. People still have a hard time wrapping their heads why it took so long. We're also hearing that supposedly somebody had passed out. Was this her? Was that somebody? There's just so many things that we don't know. And I think we're just going to have to wait. But here's a psychiatrist.
And joining me now is psychiatrist and former mental health policy fellow in the U.S. Senate, Dr. Daniel Bober. Dr. Bober, the affidavit laying out one of the surviving roommates' accounts of what she heard and saw that night. At one point, she even describes hearing someone say someone's in the house, and later she hears crying. So I want to get to a better understanding of why police were not called right away, because the events I described were frightening enough that the roommate locked herself in the bedroom. But why not call police? Could she have been in shock for that long?
Well, Mitch, they call it fight or flight, but it's actually fight, freeze, or flight. We see this in police officers. We see this in soldiers on the battlefield. It's in the activation of what we call the sympathetic nervous system, and chemicals like adrenaline are released, which prepares your body basically for the fight of its life. And sometimes people can freeze up where they become disconnected from their thoughts and emotions, which is what we call dissociation. So this is a response that can happen in anyone. And a lot of people will say, well, I would react this way or that way, but no one really knows until they're in the situation. So I don't think we can judge too harshly here.
So I understand freezing in the moment when a potential murderer or at least just a strange man is in your home after 4 a.m. What I don't quite understand at this time is the police were not called until about noon the next day. That's the information we have. And also the roommates had called other people over because they were concerned about their roommate. So they called friends to come over before they called police. So the state of shock, I'm curious about how long it could possibly last and why they would have called somebody else before they called police.
Well, I don't know that it would last that long, but maybe there's another explanation.
That's a good question.
They would have called somebody else before they cured their roommate. So they called friends to come over before they called police. Noon the next day, at this time, is home after 4 a.m. What I don't quite understand at this time is the police were not called until about noon the next day. That's the information we have. And also the roommates had called other people over because they were concerned about their roommate. So they called friends to come over before they called police. So the state of shock, I'm curious about how long it could possibly last and why they would have called somebody else before they called police.
Well, I don't know that it would last that long, but maybe there's another explanation. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she was in denial about what she was seeing. Maybe, she had been consuming alcohol. There's any number of reasons that she could have delayed it. But obviously, I don't think it was for any nefarious purpose. I just think it was probably her particular response to something that she couldn't believe that she was seeing. It's also possible that maybe she told herself that maybe this is related to one of the other roommates, that someone else is in the home. We just won't really know. There's really no way to ask, unfortunately.
And I know this is a difficult question for you to answer, but it's why we have you on. The alleged killer here killed 4 people and then just walked right past a 5th. I'm curious as to what that indicates about the mental state of the suspect in this situation.
So I believe what you're going to find out is that this killer was stalking a particular individual. And what do we know about stalkers? We know that the risk of violence increases if there's an intimate relationship with them. We know that the risk of violence increases if there's a history of substance use, criminal behavior, unemployment. So I believe that he had contact with one of these victims, whether it was a casual contact or a more intimate contact. We won't know yet until we find out more information. But I believe there was a single target here, and these people that were there with her were probably just other unfortunate victims.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find.
I don't know. So that there, like I said, I feel like there's gonna be stuff that comes out. Let me send you this. So, and by the way, Sylvia was texting me. Sylvia was not having it. He about the movie thing. Sylvia did tell me a long time ago that the sister was like in this horror film thing. Okay, so you get your credit. I just decided to mention it now. I wasn't sure I wanted to mention it before. And a lot of news articles and everybody's talking about it. But Sylvia was digging. Okay, he was digging on that before. Now, this is something that has come up previously on a previous live stream as well. And I got another email about it just now. And so I figured I guess we could talk about it. I guess it's interesting somewhat. I don't know if I should download. In regards to Papa Roger account, excuse me. In regards to Papa Roger account, his profile pic looks exactly like Bryan. It's from one of those apps where you can make yourself look cartoonish, and his account was disabled yesterday. His post in here from him have me shaking. He was in here the whole time. And Kayla was actually talking to me about this as well. She was sending me screenshots. And so it says here, I think we should give them the dignity they deserve and not theorize on where their bodies were. This guy posted 3 weeks ago. I mean, I don't know when the screenshot was taken. This is a discussion case. You are participating by choice. Snapping. Then he posed, did the killer stop at 4 victims out of exhaustion, convenience, or lack of knowledge? Question mark. Number 8. The killer is not in the victim's immediate circle, he posted December 22nd. The killer is not a student. Thoughts? Can someone post actual evidence showing where the bodies were found? I don't see anything too. Regardless of what has been released, I believe the crime is sexually motivated. Did the killer drive, walk, or some combination of both to the scene? A knife is a very risky weapon. If you know You're going to murder 4 people. Do you think the killer also had another weapon? I mean, I still don't see anything like they're saying that his account was disabled. And he asked a lot of the questions that were in the survey, I think. I don't know if that was him or another account. Thoughts on the body placement. Here's the question thing too. How did the killer leave the scene? Did he clean up at all? Did you leave the scene? Before leaving, is there anything else you did? People think maybe he was doing his own survey on Facebook. I don't know. The person here says, I would guess he carried it in his hand from wherever it came from. A knife in a sheath could cause him problems. Then he responds, which hand? And then he says, I don't freaking know, LOL. Why would you even ask that? That is kind of weird to ask. So a knife-wielding person walked from where and entered his house at what point with a large knife in hand? Google Trends. Okay. Let me show this to it's kind of interesting. Okay. All right. The next thing, let me show this here. Oh, I thought this might be interesting. This is from Fox 13 Seattle. It says, former homicide detective says Idaho murder suspect wasn't prepared for chaos after the killings. And so I was kind of wondering, Bryan Kohberger, allegedly, I guess you gotta say allegedly, if he maybe didn't anticipate how big this story was going to get, or my friend thinks that he would have had to know.
Maybe how these victims might have been targeted. How important is that information for a successful prosecution, Coy?
You never have to know why it happened. You just have to show that it happened. I mean, everybody wants to know why, and the link between this guy and the victims, and maybe it'll come out in the future, but it's not necessary for a successful prosecution.
When you look at this case compared to the hundreds of homicides you've worked successfully, what stands out to you in looking at the process they went through?
Well, first of all, this is a very small department that had no experience in anything like this. It was way outside their wheelhouse. But, they did what people should do when you have something, a task like this that's you think over your head. They reached out for help, and they did. And from reading the affidavit, it looks like they did a really good job. It sounds like they identified this guy potentially very early in this case, when I'm sure it was very frustrating for the detectives not to hear people say, you guys are screwing this case up, when they knew who probably did it really early on. And then they did the due diligence that you have to do to get this guy in the end.
Some of the things we're learning, like they found the sheath to the knife. This guy was supposed to be have a lot of information, a degree in criminology. He seems like a moron to me, like he did not have this well planned out. But you have interviewed killers face-to-face, Coy, numerous times. What do you think about this guy?
Well, it's like they say when people go into battle, you make all these plans and in the war, but when it starts, everything goes out the window, right? Because it's chaos. And he wasn't prepared for the amount of chaos in this case. And he did something stupid. He left the sheath to the knife right there. I mean, thank you very much. We'll take that. And they were eventually able to get the DNA profile off the button to the sheath, which of course wasn't in CODIS. But they did have a male DNA profile that shouldn't have been there, and that was huge.
Let's talk about that DNA and the genealogy. They said that they got DNA from the trash at the house where his father lived and used that to match back to him. Is this how homicides are worked these days?
Yeah, absolutely. What they did, this is what's called YSTR DNA. The Y chromosome passes down from all the males in the family. So male to father to son, son to grandson, grandson to great-grandson. It's the same YSTR all the way down. So they had this DNA, and they could show that he was of the same YSTR as the father at the house, which is huge. It means it has to be a male directly related to that father. And of course, this is the guy who was in Idaho at the time, and they had the car surveillance and stuff. So that was the key, the YSTR. I mean, it's now they'll do the complete profile and get an exact match where you'll have, the probabilities and the
That's what Maven was saying as well.
quintillions or 50 to the 50th power or something now, the way they do it. But that was the key to getting it. You have to show this guy's a male relative of the father using the YSTR or the Y chromosome. He's a direct relative, which it said the affidavit eliminates 99.9% of the population. So that's a very good lead.
I've seen people on Facebook compare this guy to a Ted Bundy. Do you think he was a budding Ted Bundy? Maybe Ted Bundy would have been caught thanks to the DNA we have today. What do you think about this guy?
Well, I certainly think Ted Bundy would have been caught because of the forensics today, but I don't buy that this guy's a Ted Bundy. I mean, he's a grandiose kind of I don't want to say a nut because he's not psychotic.
He's not a nut. I'd say he's a nut. Let me get the super chats real quick. Okay. Willie Black, thank you for the super chat, says, gotta respect police for hiding the fact that Dylan actually saw him. They protected her by doing so. He would have went after her if they did it. Possibly. Yeah, that's true. Very possible. Maybe he would have thought of like trying to, I don't know, get some sort of vengeance or something. Sherry, thank you for the super chat, says, the brain does amazing things to protect from severe trauma. Disassociating through amnesia, freeze, etc. can last hours and take hours to come out of, leaving one confused. Thank you, Cherry. Senses says, one of my favorite crime channels here. Thank you so much. Order in the court. Thank you for the smile chat. Is smiling because lawyer hair color reminded him of girls. I don't know. Laura, thank you. He seems like he has a distaste for women. Laura, thank you for the super chat. Says, hey there. I really enjoy your channel. Question for you. I can't imagine this was his first kill. He must have had killed before this, with the type of kill and how many people he killed. What do you think? I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, it is it seems like a big jump. And people have speculated that like he had killed that dog or skinned the dog, even though police said they don't believe it's related. I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to kind of fathom that somebody would just jump from like killing one singular person to just jumping to 4, but I don't know. Weed Chick. Folks need to study survivors of horrible crimes. They were survivors and witnesses of Ted Bundy. This poor girl. DA may end up being the one who is able to seal BK's fate. That's true. We don't know the whole story, right? Nancy, thank you for the super chat, says, at 4 a.m., how odd for DoorDash delivery and then 4 murders within minutes of each other. Thoughts? It's odd. I mean, I don't have many thoughts behind that because I thought they cleared the DoorDash thing, right? So it's weird. I mean, I don't know if this guy was just out there waiting and plotting. The timing that he did this within a small time frame, I guess. I don't know. Were they awake? I wonder if they were even fully in a deep sleep because it was so close to when this DoorDash food came.
But he's an odd duck, and he planned to do this for whatever reason. Would he have done others later? Maybe. I don't know. But you can't call a guy a serial killer when there's a series of one. So I don't buy into the whole he's another Ted Bundy thing. Although, like I said, if Ted Bundy had committed the crimes today, he wouldn't have got nearly as far because of the advances in forensic science.
Floyd, if you were working this case, would you now be looking at other unsolved homicides in the area? And let me ask this more directly. Do you think it's possible?
And that ties in perfectly to the question that Nancy just... Oh, no, not Nancy. It was the other person, Laura, about being the whole first kill thing.
He's already killed somebody prior to the quadruple homicides.
It is possible. Yes, I would do that. I don't necessarily believe it is a fact. I think he was building up to this point, and that's why he was... these guys, if they're serial killers, they usually get better as they go because they have experience. This reads to me like a rookie. the first time, leaving the knife sheath there. What a huge thing. Why wouldn't you have that knife sheath on your belt so you couldn't possibly leave it there? That's the thing. These are rookie mistakes. And like the father, I think, said, this guy made a huge mistake. It's going to get him before he was arrested. And he was exactly right. That's what this guy did. So I would do my due diligence, but I don't believe there's any other cases that can attack this guy.
If you were working with the FBI profilers and putting a profile on this guy, would you say he's a narcissist, a sociopath, a spree killer? What do you think, Lloyd?
Well, he's certainly a narcissist, I believe, based on stuff I've read about his behavior. And I'm actually friends with someone who taught him at one point, and I can't really get into that, but he is a narcissist, and he is I don't know enough to know about him if he's a sociopath or a psychopath, but yeah, the boy ain't right. I don't know. There's something going on here. Yeah,
that's a great way to put that. For the public, it seemed like it was a long time, but homicide investigations, in the scheme of things, this really wasn't. But there was a lot of pressure on the department. Put it in perspective through your career. Did it take too long to get to this point in justice? Does that really matter anymore?
It didn't take too long, obviously, and it doesn't matter as much as it used to because of the forensic abilities we used to have. I mean, I think this was for us. No information case taken 6 weeks. It's a win. I mean, that's not outrageous. The problem is they were under such pressure, and what they could learn from this is how to handle that pressure and not release. I commented early in this case, I thought they were releasing way too much information. If this was my case, I wouldn't want any of this stuff out, because you have to leave something out there so that some nutcase doesn't try to confess to it and tell you something he read in the paper, which happens every now and then. But overall, I mean, for a 35-man department, they did a great job. I mean, I got to give them kudos.
Retired Seattle homicide detective Coyd Steiger, thank you for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
That's a good interview.
All right, we got brand new.
I was kind of wondering, these people in the back, though, real quick. Are they just working, or are they props? Oh, let's see here, right at the end. I find it kind of weird to, like, I mean, I know they probably do that all the time at the news. I'm sure it's normal, and he has like the Elantra in the back on the computer or whatever. I mean, I guess they're working editing, but like, I feel weird like, interviewing when there's people behind me just chilling, like listening. But I'm sure that's normal news stuff. But are they back there listening to him talk, or are they actually working? Maybe they're working, or both. I don't know. So this came out a couple hours ago. Steve Goncalves. I think it's a new interview with Fox.
Apparently stalked their home at least 12 times before the crime and came face to face with another roommate during the murders.
Cell phone data also shows he apparently returned to the scene just hours later before police were even called.
And our next guest unfortunately lost his daughter, Kaylee, during that attack. His name is Steve Goncalves, and he also joins us with attorney Shannon Gray. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Steve, were you there? Were you there in the courtroom?
I sure was. We expect to have somebody there every day.
What did you think when you saw the suspect, the man that might have killed or is allegedly killed your daughter?
Yeah, when I seen the defendant, I seen somebody that looked like he was overwhelmed and had no idea what was going on. He didn't look as confident as I thought he was going to be based off of his background.
How'd you feel, though?
Oh, my feelings were, I was angry. I'll be honest, I was angry, and I wanted to do, my mind was filled with different things, but I kept my cool and my composure, and there's a right way to do things, and that's what I was thinking about.
Steve, I can't imagine. Also want to get your reaction to this affidavit, which revealed a lot of information we didn't previously know. What of the revelation, what were new to you? What details stick out to you?
The actual location of the sleeve, the knife sleeve, that we had heard that there was a sleep, but we didn't know the location. We heard there was a DNA, but there wasn't a hit in the database. So knowing that they had put all those things together and the timeline that they wrote from like the beginning to the last page was very precise, and it painted a picture of, weeks and weeks of investigation and following, and each line gave me a little bit more confidence that we were in a very good position.
Steve, there's so many questions. As great and as informative as that affidavit was, there's still a lot of questions out there. Just curious, did they keep the families involved? And if so, how? Did they say, we're very confident we have a suspect, we think we're getting closer? Did they let you see this timeline before they actually even made the arrest?
No, we filled in parts of the timelines through the time. It was a co-work, but those guys did by far the vast majority of the work. We kind of inserted ourselves, and we said we need to be communicated. We wanted to have meetings. We wanted to be helpful. We had this audience. We had people that were willing to listen and willing to help and provide information that may have been missing. We had this white car to look for. So yeah, they helped, and we worked together. But I didn't have the details like that, and I told them not to give me any details that could accidentally mess up the case.
So did you know for the first time, like we did, that one of the roommates came face to face with him and described him with bushy eyebrows, with a thin build but an athletic build, the way we now know that was written? Did you know that?
I had heard that somebody has seen somebody in a mask. I didn't know if it was something that was like yelled out, and one of the people that was downstairs heard that. I did not know it was one of the people downstairs that actually eyewitnessed this person. And to me, it was just a call. So I wasn't positive that it wasn't just a rumor. So we never mentioned it. The details in the affidavit are kind of shocking. But I'm sure we'll get the more details as time goes on. But yeah, it reads very bizarre.
Shannon, if he is convicted, do you expect the death penalty?
Well, I think Steve and the family have talked about it, and I think it's something that the decision that will be made by all the families on whether or not the death penalty is something that the state pursues on this case. So I don't think it's just a decision for the Goncalves family. I think it's a decision for all the victims' families, and then, they'll see where it goes from there.
I say go for it.
There.
Even though he'll probably be on there for a long time.
And you had a chance to look at this affidavit as well. How airtight is the case as you look at it right now?
Well, I thought the affidavit was a lot of information was in the affidavit, and it sounds like it's a solid case. I was a former prosecutor myself, now criminal defense attorney. I look at it in both ways. As a prosecution, it looks like it has a really great timeline. There's DNA evidence. There's the evidence from the cell phones and the automobile, and that he was aware of the location coming back and forth. So there's a lot of good information there. And then when I flip over to the defense side, I still have a hard time understanding how they're going to get past the DNA evidence on the sheath. A lot of times in cases that I've defended, sometimes you go in and you sit down and you talk with the defendant and say, hey, this is a great piece of evidence. How do we get past this piece of evidence? And so I think that's one of the most convincing pieces of the affidavit is the DNA evidence. So
sometimes, Steve, you have gut feelings. Did you think when you looked at this guy in the jumpsuit, you were looking at your daughter's killer?
Yeah, I did. I did a research before I came into that courtroom. I was looking for a certain look. I wanted him to meet me eye to eye. He had done that exact same behavior previously when he was in Pennsylvania, and he chose not to, or he was afraid to look back. And for me, that wasn't a good sign.
What about the fact that he smiled?
I didn't see it. I heard about that later. I don't know. It's hard to comment on that.
Steve, we're all parents, and for every parent watching, when you give birth, you hold that baby and you have all these dreams for them, and you go through the hard years, the years of them always being with you and needing your help to get the small things, the cereal, the milk, and all of that. And then you go through the hard teenage years.
I wouldn't even want to think about that shit. I mean, I know I'm sure he's thinking about it, but to be ask that on air. Fuck, that's tough, dude.
And then you look forward to their 20s when they're going to get married and they're going to bring grandchildren home. And you've gotten through all that and you've raised these amazing kids. He robbed that from you and your wife. What goes through your mind when you think about that? Do you think about that when you see him, or do you just want to jump over and do what most dads would want to do and take him out or take him down and, you know, beat him up or whatever it is?
I mean, the physical side is there, but I know that's not realistic. So what I go with is I can make this man feel like he picked the very worst family to do that to. And every time he turns on the TV, he sees us. And every time he thinks something positive is happening in his case, he sees one of us communicating and he realizes he has zero hope. That's what I hope, and that's what I can do. I don't want to worry and think about things that I'm still going to, but those aren't realistic things for me to just put my time and energy into. I might as well stay focused on what I can do. And I want this guy to be sick of seeing me, sick of hearing the cases. New evidence keeps coming in from audience members, just like what you guys have on today. And I want this case to get stronger and stronger to the point where he realizes that he's not going to be on the planet that long.
Steve, you've been an amazing advocate for your daughter, and the courage it takes to be in that courtroom and see him is immense. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, as well as Shannon Gray, the attorney. Good luck as things move forward to January 12th.
Yeah, Steve, we're so sorry for what you're going through.
So
God bless your family. Thank you for speaking out.
Thank you for your practice.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay, so that was the Fox interview. I think we're kind of coming to an end. Let me see here real quick from FBI. Yeah, I think we're good. Let me get these super chats and Chick, thank you for the super chat. Says folks need to. Oh, I got that already. Thank you so much. And Nancy Jennings, I got aware. Thank you for the super chat. Says maybe Dylan didn't call 911 because she feared he would go back. Yeah, we have talked about that possibility. Very possible. Cape Town Carms, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. That's Africa, I think, right? Laura Rutin, thank you for the super chat. Says I have such a hard time believing that a father who knows about this murder case and knows his son has a car that they're looking for doesn't know something's very wrong. How much do parents do to protect their children? Yeah, I've seen a lot of people kind of talk about that and have suspicions that maybe he knew something. What is this? Okay, there's something else we could look at. Oh, there's a little video we can watch. Thanks, Mo. Send this to myself. Well, I can just type it in. Let's see, Court TV. Court TV. Okay, let's take a look. Investigation team returns to the crime scene. Back at it. Rhyme born. Brian Anton. That's it. Okay, so we're up to date. Think we're up to date. I don't know if that's the defense team. That's a good question. They were already there, but I don't know if they're back again. That's a good question. Let's see what else we got. Police captain discusses arrest of Idaho suspect.
The police department believes that the person we have in custody, which would be Kohberger, is the one who's responsible for these crimes. We are still continuing to investigate, and certainly we're looking into all aspects, but he has been named as our suspect, and we believe he is the one that is responsible. We got word directly after the press conference yesterday that we had already received 400 calls into the tip line after we made that request. So the outpouring of information from the public was immediate. Now that we have a suspect, we're going to be investigating every aspect of him that we can absolutely find out. And that's why we asked yesterday for the public's help, and we got 400 phone calls within the first hour after the press conference, which is great. But we're trying to build this picture now of him, who he is, his history, how we got to this event, why this event occurred, all those other answers to the questions that we still remain. We're going to try to answer those. So that's where the investigation is certainly going to be focused on now for the time being.
All right. Let me see what else we got. Check out how you guys are doing. We're pretty much towards the end. Just going to read some of the chat. See what else is being said. 42% say Brian's father knew, and 58% say no. And what I meant by new too is like, yeah, any kind of variation, like had a kind of inkling, not maybe that he specifically knew, but any kind of like idea. Make sure you also check out the Swag It app. Okay, I'm gonna be posting more on there. Maybe I'll try to post some opinions on there, stuff like that, and some other content. Check out the Swag It app. We're doing a giveaway at the end of the month. Check it out when we get out of here. Dirty Vegas, thank you for the super chat. Says, reminds me of Richard Speck, who killed those women and one hit until daylight because she was scared that he was still there. Ooh, she was the only one who survived. Okay, that's a good point. It's a good point. That's possible. I think calls, we might leave it for tonight or something because we've already been 2 hours. I feel like I have a feeling too that if we do calls, it's going to be messy. I have like a messy situation feeling. Maybe we'll do it tonight though, because we've been here 2 hours. We can straight out do just a straight call stream. I don't know. I got a messy feeling about it. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a ride. That's a good point right that she made. Dirty Vegas. Got a bad feeling. And let me see. I have notifications. Let me see. I should have notifications. Oh, did you guys want to talk about the Utah thing real quick? Well, we can end off on that if you want. I'll have notifications in 4 hours. I have none right now. Let's do the calls. Because I think because right now if we do calls now, it's going to be kind of like rushed. Kind of if I come back later refreshed, and we just straight out do a call stream, or we just take calls right on in. We could do an hour or two of calls or something. Am I psychic? No, hell nah. Hell nah. Want to take a look at this Utah thing, see what's going on? Okay, let's take a look. Somebody had sent me several links. Okay, here we go. Diggs. I sent a couple links here. We'll take a little look at this. Let's see. Alrighty. Utah father kills wife, 5 kids, mother-in-law, police say. Stunning, very close community. 8 people from one family, including 5 children, found shot to death inside a southern Utah home Wednesday afternoon in an apparent murder unaliving, officials announced. The children's father, 42, Michael Hott, is suspected in killing the children. His wife, 40-year-old Tasha Haidt, and Tasha's mother, 78-year-old Gail Earl, before killing himself. The children were identified by age. Wow. A 17-year-old girl, a 12-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, and a 7-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old boy. Oh, they did a news release. Let's check this out.
I'm going to introduce us to you and to the viewers and the public so you know who we are. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to explain to you the incident that happened yesterday.
Mormons.
Not in great detail. And then we'll have some information by the mayor. And we'll get that to you really quickly. First of all, my name is Rob Dotson. That's ROBDOTSON. I'm the city manager here of Enix City, Utah, and acting public information officer of Enix City. To my right here is Mayor Jeffrey Chestnut, GEOFFREY CHESNUT, and to his right is Police Chief Jackson Ames, JACKSON AMES, and to his right is Tim Marriott from the Iron County School District, TIMMARRIOTT. Well, I'm going to read to you the press release that was recently set out just about half an hour ago, and then I will give you some more details. I want you to let you know that we will ask a few questions afterwards, not very many, and you probably understand that the investigation is ongoing, and so there's a lot of information we can't share, and it would not be appropriate to do so. We appreciate the media, we appreciate the public, and the mayor will talk a little bit about what's happening in our community, and we'll go from there. So yesterday, January 4th, officers from the Enix City Police Department were summoned to 4923 North Albert Drive in reference to a welfare check. Concerned families and friends had contacted police earlier after not hearing from the people there. Officers entered the residence at approximately 4 p.m. and discovered 3 adults and 5 minors deceased inside the home, and each appeared to have sustained gunshot wounds. While this intense investigation is ongoing, investigators currently believe there are no suspects outstanding. Evidence suggests that the suspect took his own life after killing 7 others in the home. The suspect is 42-year-old Michael Haidt. The 2 other adults in the home were Haidt's wife, Tasha Haidt, 40 years of age, and Tasha's mother, 78-year-old Gail Earl. The minors were Haidt's children, a 17-year-old female, 12-year-old female, 7-year-old female, 7-year-old male, and a 4-year-old male. Now, welfare checks are common, and someone with whom Tasha had an appointment yesterday morning called and reported that she had missed the appointment and requested a law enforcement conduct a welfare check. A few hours after that welfare check call came in and Tasha was not located, a missing persons report was requested and was received by Cedar City Police Department due to Michael's office location in Cedar City. Once determined Michael's home address was in Enix City, the missing persons report was passed to Enix City officers, at which point the welfare check to locate Tasha became an effort to find the entire family. A little bit of ancillary information. It is known by court documents that there was a divorce petition that was filed, and that was made part of the information given to dispatch. Crime scene technicians from the Iron County Sheriff's Department, Cedar City Police Department, and Enix City Police Department worked throughout the night. In fact, some of them are still on duty to piece together the events and to continue to investigate the details of what happened. In the early hours of this morning, the decedents were transported away from the home, and as part of the investigation, we'll have autopsies conducted by the State Medical Examiner's Office in northern Utah. Now, other family members have been contacted, of course, before we set any press releases out, and they are well aware of the situation and in having conversations with investigators as we speak. Now, we're going to have the mayor talk to you a little bit about the community and give you what's happening right now. Yep. And then at the permission of the Iron County School District, Tim Marriott will be talking to you about the resources that have been provided there. So Mayor Chestnut.
Good morning, thank you. I am Jeffrey Chestnut, I'm the mayor here in Enix City. It's not too often something like this hits very close to home. In fact, the Hates were my neighbors. The youngest children played in my yard with my sons. Enix City is a very close community. Just a few weeks ago, I was mentioning to my wife as I looked at a Zillow app that less than 1% of the homes in Enix City were for sale. No one wants to leave here. The neighbors are good, the people are wonderful, and the efforts that we make on one another's behalf is like family. I've seen reports that put Enoch as a rural community, but you should understand that Enoch is a home of lots of young professionals and their families. Our neighborhood alone, one cul-de-sac, I think at last count about 2 years ago, had I think 55 kids in it. So this is a tremendous blow to many, many families who have spent many, many nights with these individuals who are now gone. It is unfortunate what we're dealing with, but we appreciate both the respect that the media has shown to this point. Seeing some of the reporting, I know that some information has been available through public documents, and I appreciate the respect that the media has shown to the family and the community to this point. I also am very appreciative of the resources that have been made available to our community. We've had calls from Governor Spencer Cox expressing condolences. I spoke with him last night in the command center, and as recently as this morning, we received calls and requests or an offer for assistance from the National Security Council, wanting to make sure that if we needed resources for our community, given the scale of this incident, that they would be made available. So we here in Enoch, a little town of about 7,500, are very grateful to the greater world at large, who are mindful of us at this time. And we ask that if you have the ability to contribute some resources to help, that is great. But at this point, we do ask more that you respect the privacy of the families involved, and that we will do our best as the community leaders to give you information through the media that would allow you to have the information you need to do your jobs and allow that privacy to be respected. So, did you want to say anything? If not, we can take a few questions.
Tim, go ahead.
Or Tim?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Tim Marriott. I am the Student Services Coordinator for the Iron County School District. Obviously, this has had a tremendous impact on our schools. We've got some amazing counselors and therapists and social workers in our schools that are doing a fantastic job in the trenches as we speak. We've mobilized our crisis mobile response team in our schools, and we've definitely put in our therapists and counselors at those schools that are most impacted by this tragedy. Like the mayor said, I've been blown away at the resources that have been offered to us. We've had school districts, we've had county, we've had private clinicians that are all ready to jump in, drop everything that they're doing, and come support our students. And that support is just incredible. And that just speaks to the volume of the community that we live in. We recognize that the trials and the hard times are not going to be done after today. We notice that there's quite a few students that are gone today in their schools. And we recognize that these next several days, weeks, months that are coming are going to be difficult for our schools and for our teachers. And I know that our community and our therapists and our school counselors, teachers, they stand ready to be that support and that rock for these students to make their day as normal as possible with the difficult things that they will continue to face. So again, I'm just so grateful for our schools and for our administration, and they are just really doing a good job and doing the best they can, even though that they are hurting themselves, but they're trying to put on a brave face for our students.
How many different schools?
With the age range, I believe there would be 3 schools that were impacted. Is it 4? So there's an elementary schools, middle school, and a high schooler. So, and one of the preschools. Okay. So we've got four different schools where the students, the children were attending. So.
Is the presumed motive divorce?
We don't have investigators are still working on that. That's the information that we had was that there was a divorce petition filed. That investigation is still ongoing at this point.
When was it filed, and was it filed by the husband or the wife?
It appears that it was, according to the court documents, it was filed on the 21st of December, and it was filed by the wife.
So some detailed questions. So who's living in the house at the time? Was this the husband or the wife, or who's living in that house?
At this point, we don't have the details exactly of that, of the living situation. We know that her mother was there and had been there providing support through the difficulties that they were encountering. So.
And then who was it she was supposed to meet with, can you say, or why was the concern raised for a welfare check?
At this point, the individual who made that welfare check request, given the they were still very early in the investigation, were not ready. Investigators would rather not release that information at this point.
How long do you think they had been deceased before they were discovered?
We don't have the official information, but there are witnesses who spoke with members of the family the night before.
Are they aware they spoke with members of the family?
They spoke. The daughter and the mother were at a church activity the night before.
Women's group?
Yes.
Did anyone, like in the neighborhood, hear anything or suspect anything was off at this house?
In the neighborhood, they're half-acre lots. Big homes on half-acre lots. You don't hear a lot coming from your neighbors' homes. So at this point, as I said, we don't have any information that we can release regarding that, but there's nothing that I have seen any corroborated information on that would give us any indication of that.
Had law enforcement ever been to this home previously, or had any dealings with this family?
Yeah, we had been involved in some investigations with the family a couple years prior.
Can you say what investigation involved?
At this moment, I'd rather not, but we were familiar with the family, yes.
Was there anything recent or anything that, since the divorce papers were filed, was there a protective order or anything?
Nothing recent that law enforcement was aware of, no.
We appreciate all of you coming. You may have noticed that there's a little quaking in our voices and a little shininess to our eyes. That's not fear. We're not afraid of you. You all look really friendly and nice people. This is what our public feel. Discussing it, talking to each other about it, brings out these emotions, and it's natural. The expectation is that we're supposed to be tough. The police officers that investigated, that walked through the home, that had to discover the information, had to record the information.
Yeah.
They're human beings. They know this family. This is emotion that you see. So really what we're inviting the public to do through you, the media, and through our friends and neighbors and all over the world, is if you are a praying person, to pray for law enforcement. It impacts them. Pray for the family. If you're not a religious person, care for your family too. Stand with your family. Support them. Love them. Just like we love each other and we love this family. We don't know why this happened. No one will probably know what was going through the minds of these individuals. However, we do know that they were our friends, they were our neighbors, and that we loved them. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the time you've taken to be here. We appreciate everyone who is just lending so much support.
Rob, is this harder because as the community comes together, you realize that there was nothing that you could do in this moment?
I could ask the media that question, right? I could ask anybody that question, and I think that's a great question. There will be questions that everybody asks themselves. What if I had done this? What if I had done that? Those aren't very good questions to ask. The question to ask is, what do we do now? What do we do going forward? Our police officers are tired. They're continuing to find out answers. They will continue with very little rest. The family members, the neighbors, the friends, they continue forward, caring for, talking about this, getting help if they are struggling with it. Resources are coming, as Mr. Marriott said. They'll be here for them. Just reach out and get help. Don't hold it in.
Do you know how long the family had lived here?
You know what, I think, I don't have the answer to that question. Those questions are ancillary, and it's appreciated, and those questions you can probably find out in other resources. So we're gonna end right now.
Was a suspect because the weapon was found on site?
We're not gonna answer any more questions. You can make you can probably deduce some things from the press release, but we do thank you, okay?
Was this the same community with the Las Vegas shooting incident? The woman
That's a good question. We're gonna go. You guys can go ahead.
Oh shit! He I think he said, like, is this the same community? Something with the Las Vegas shooter.
Good. You know this could go on forever. We're not going to. We got a lot of things we have to do, but I want to answer that one last question. Okay? Yes. One of the victims of the Las Vegas shooting was a resident here.
Oh, the victim. Okay.
And our hearts go out to maybe some ancillary feelings that family has, because this is not a good thing. So thank you very much, everyone.
Wow. So that was we sidestepped at the end because we're about to get off here, but about this whole situation where this Utah father killed wife, 5 kids, mother-in-law, wiped out the family. And apparently, allegedly, I guess this woman was filed for divorce papers. And so, I don't know. Some of these people, they got stuff in their head. You have that many kids. Some of these people can't see life without their, separation. And maybe then add the religious thing to it as well. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy, man. All right. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. Maybe I'll be back on tonight. We'll see what happens. Please hit like on the way out, subscribe, turn on bell notifications. Appreciate the support. Dak, thank you for the super chat as well. Says, what if Bryan was a door dasher? I don't know. I think we would have heard of that by now if he did that kind of work, but who knows? Anything's possible. We'll see what comes out during the trial. Yeah, crazy, huh? Anyway, love you guys. Take care. Peace. Bye. Bloop, bloop. Thank you for joining me today.